He basically said divorce was not an option. He got on top of her, and that's when I first saw him stabbing her with a knife.
My name is Banfield. I'm a federal agent. This is my house.
Your wife has died. So sorry.
We've got a face-off in the au pair affair murder trial. Co-defendants at odds. She says one thing, he says another. And Brendan Banfield is expected to testify this week. So whose side is more believable to you? We'll talk about it. Plus, crying, washing his hands, Brendan Banfield caught on body camera footage right after his wife died. We'll show you the video and break down his behavior with an expert. Plus, a body found in singer David's Tesla. Now his friend is arrested. So are we one step closer to finding justice for Celeste Rivas Hernandez? And Sarah Grace Patrick back in court today, the teenager accused of shooting her parents once out of jail. What should the court do? We'll talk about it. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Tuesday morning to you, my friends. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. I hope you're staying safe and warm wherever you're waking up this morning, and we're so glad you're here with us. We put together a great show for you, so let's get it started. Grab that cup of coffee, tea, whatever you're having this morning. It's time for my opening statement. Be careful what you wish for. Convicted child abuser Tim Ferreter should be careful what he wishes for. Right now, he's appealing his convictions in Florida for the aggravated child abuse of his adopted son. He tortured the boy by forcing him to live in what I called a tomb in their garage. No lights in there. The child had to use a bucket for a bathroom. A terrifying situation for a young boy. And Ferreter was sentenced to 5 years in prison for his crimes. Well, the Court of Appeals heard arguments and affirmed the lower court's ruling, but nothing is final just yet until Ferreter has a chance to file a motion for a rehearing and have consideration on that. So we'll keep you posted and we'll see what happens there. But let's talk about his push for a new trial. I think this guy is very foolish because you know what, my friends? He could have been sentenced to 40 years behind bars. The judge gave him a considerable break. And if he gets a new trial, and let's just say that he's convicted again, you think he's going to get a better sentence? I sure hope not. I would think he runs the risk of only doing worse for himself. And if I were the judge, I would have had no mercy on him. I don't care how bad of a menace that kid was. The child deserved to be treated like a human being. So I say, go ahead, Tim Ferreter. Shoot your shot on appeal. And you just might shoot yourself in the foot and do more prison time. That's my opening statement on this Tuesday morning. Let me know if you like it. Right now, time for your daily docket.
I find the state has met their burden today by a preponderance of the evidence. And Miss Patrick, because of that, I'm bound by the law. And I do not believe that you would be a proper candidate for bond.
In Georgia, we got teenager Sarah Grace Patrick due back in court. She's fighting again for bond. Her hearing's going to begin at 9 a.m. Eastern time. In Florida, we've got ex-NFL star Antonio Brown set to be back in court. He's got a status conference today. He's facing attempted murder accusations. That case is set to start up at 9 a.m. Eastern as well. So we'll take you to court when these cases kick off. In Utah, we've got the family murder plot trial for defendant Kevin Ellis also resuming. His mom, Tracy Grist, might be taking the stand today against him. Remember, she's his co-defendant as well. We'll keep you posted. Court starts at 2 p.m. Eastern today in that case. Right now, though, let's turn to your top story in Virginia. We got a courtroom showdown coming up. The au pair versus her former lover, Brendan Banfield. Now, court resumes tomorrow with the defendant expected to take the stand in his own defense. We know the au pair already turned on him by taking that plea and turning state's evidence. She testified that she and Brendan Banfield posed as his wife, Christine, online to lure a man named Joseph Ryan to come to the house to have a violent rape encounter.
So he didn't want to get divorced. Did he tell you what he wanted to do?
Yes.
What did he say?
He mentioned his plan to get rid of her.
Now, the defense's theory is that catfishing did not occur, that Brendan Banfield was in no way responsible for what occurred. All right, so both co-defendants telling different stories. Whose side are you buying so far? Let's talk about it. Let's bring in former homicide prosecutor and Professor Melba Pearson and deception expert and former law enforcement officer, Dr. Mike McCutcheon. Good morning to you both. All right, so Dr. Mike, the au pair testified to seeing Brendan Banfield stabbing his wife, Christine. We have a clip of that we want you to take a look at to start us off. Here we go.
And a few times I looked and I was able to see him stabbing her, and he would stab, and other times he would hold the knife in a position how it was.
Okay, Dr. Mike, tell us what you see, please.
So I saw a couple of things there. First thing I looked at is I looked at her lips, and sometimes we see though when they suck those lips in that could be a cue for deception, but usually it occurs either during a question or while the question's being asked. For her, it looks like what she's doing is she's trying to use that as a way to remember. And she's trying to remember what's happening, and it's a difficult emotional situation. And then the other thing is we always talk about the touching of the face, and depending where they're touching on the face, connects with different parts of the brain. Now, we see with deceptive people, they'll usually touch before or during their statement or during the question. So you're asking me, did you do it, for example? And I go, and then I answer. She didn't do that. She did it after, where she touches her hair. She makes a very emotional, difficult statement, and then this is a pacifying behavior, and then she touches her hair after. So I think that from looking at that short clip, I think that her statement here is truthful, from her with that lip movement and her touching her head for certain.
Boy, sharp analysis. Dr. Mike, thank you kindly. Melba, I want to ask you about the legal theory the defense is going with here. They're saying no catfishing occurred. What? Let's look at a clip.
Based upon your review of this data, were you able to draw any opinions related to this case?
I was.
And what were those opinions?
That catfishing did not occur.
All right, Melba, what do you think of this theory?
Well, good morning, Julie and Mike. And yeah, I think that theory is going to be unsuccessful in the long run, because the bottom line is basically on cross-examination, the prosecution was like, yeah, but you couldn't pinpoint with accuracy who was sitting behind the computer. So they were pointing to, oh, well, she had left the house at X time, and she, they were kind of pointing to some of her usage patterns, her being the victim, to somehow say, well, she was in control of the account at that point, so she had set up this fetish account looking for this type of encounter. But again, the detective's credibility was shot 10 different ways from sunrise, on a number of ways, but most importantly, you can't say with accuracy who actually set up the account. So I don't think that argument is going to go anywhere.
Great point, Melba. Yeah, and in your experience, jurors are smart, aren't they? They're smart. They can think about, well, wait a minute, all their devices that they use in their life, and take this guy's testimony and come to the conclusion you just arrived at. Wait a second, like, you don't know for certain who did this. So excellent points. So when Brendan Banfield gets up there, and presumably he's gone with the no catfishing occurred theory, I wasn't part of this, I was the big hero. Mike McCutcheon, how does he need to come off to the jury? How do you think he needs to connect with them?
So one of the things that I teach for police officers when they're testifying in court is your goal isn't to guilty or not guilty. Your goal is to be believable. And that's by being just a regular person. If he's going to try to put on a show, that's going to come across as insincere. If he tries to give himself too much emotion, it's going to come across as insincere. He just needs to, they say just be yourself, and he needs to try to connect with them as I'll say a regular person. If he's going to try to flourish his emotions or what they think he should be feeling, I think they're going to be able to see through that. And you have to be likable. They have to like you. And it's sad that sometimes, even if you have good evidence, if they don't like you, you could be found guilty. And so he really needs to work on being a regular person that they can connect with. And that would be his strategy.
Yes. And as you were talking, Dr. Mike, you made me think of a follow-up question for you, please. We know this guy is an IRS agent, or at least he was. I don't know what the status of his employment is currently. He says it very early on, when he makes his 911 call, he puts it out there, I'm a federal agent, he calls himself, and it's no secret that's what he did. How much do you think he should lean into that role for the jury?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think I can't say for sure. I think if he tries to lean into that and to say, "Look, I was a government official and my honesty and integrity," I think they can lean into that. But at the same time, again, too much. They don't want too much of that, where you're saying, well, you could never do this because you worked as an IRS agent. I think it'd be, he could, I'll say, sprinkle it in so that they know that he had a background investigation and he had an important job and that he had a lot of responsibilities. I think that would be okay, but I don't think that that's going to sway them one way or another.
I appreciate it, Dr. Mike. And Melba, one last quick question for you. I'm thinking about the prosecution side. Are they going to really play that up with him in terms of how the au pair said he knew an investigation was coming, so he was so careful to manufacture everything in this plot so as to keep his hands clean?
Absolutely. And I think that the prosecution can use his background and training almost as a weapon in terms of, well, you know how investigations go, so you plan this crime accordingly in the hopes of pulling one over and trying to get away with murder. And it's not going to be successful.
Yeah, sharp analysis. Melba, thank you. You're coming along with us. We thank you for that. Dr. Mike McCutcheon, thank you for coming on the show. We'd love to have you back again sometime soon. We'll hit a break. When we come back, we're not done talking about Brendan Banfield.
You want to wash your hands? Probably feel better after that.
Yeah, we're going to show you him washing his hands moments after he learned his wife died. First, though, we got a twist to tell you about the investigation into Celeste Rivas Hernandez's death. Singer David's friend arrested, but not on murder charges. We'll explain. A husband is shot to death, but was his killing a family affair? We're breaking down the twisted alleged conspiracy that's playing out in a Utah courtroom.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Did an affair with the family's au pair lead to double murder?
Use it. I'm gonna kill her. I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The au pair affair murder trial continues Wednesday morning on Court TV. That was singer David in a documentary with Spotify. Over 2 years
ago. Well, now, a friend of the singer's is finding himself behind bars related to the investigation into the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. 23-year-old Neo Langston was arrested last week in Montana on an out-of-state warrant issued by the LAPD. Now, this after the popular streamer failed to appear as a grand jury witness. Langston's being held this morning without any bond. He's back in the custody of the LAPD. As for David, he was identified as a suspect in the death of Rivas Hernandez late last year, but has not been charged with any crimes. Now, the remains of Celeste Rivas Hernandez were found back in September, her body severely decomposed. The teenager was reported missing in April of 2024. Okay, so apparently they wanted the testimony from this Neo Langston to go before the grand jury. He didn't show up, so police come and get you. You get picked up on the failure to appear warrant, and we'll see what happens next. But we're wondering, how might this arrest impact the investigation? Let's bring in our power panel. Still with me, former prosecutor Melba Pearson. Want to welcome in private investigator Manuel Gomez. Okay, so it seems that his testimony must be important, huh, Melba? What do you say about that? They picked him up.
Yeah, well, like as you said at the top, Julie, you know, when you get that subpoena, you got to show up, right? Like, it's not like, oh, if I ignore this, it'll go away. No, that then comes the knock at the door. So he learned that in real time. And so I think at the end of the day, the investigation is continuing because we don't have any clear answers, right? We still don't know her cause of death. We still don't know how this poor child, yes, child, ended up in the trunk or the frunk of this car. And, you know, the investigators need to talk to all the friends, everybody within David's circle, to kind of try and figure out and piece together a timeline and figure out what caused her death and what happened in her last days on Earth. And he may have a very key piece of the puzzle, but we won't know that until he actually sits down and testifies. So that's why it's critical, especially if he's so close to David, that investigators get to hear what he has to say. But in all likelihood, he doesn't want to be a snitch. That's probably his mindset.
Oh, yeah, I think you're exactly right, Melba. Manuel, I thought of you as soon as Melba put the emphasis on the child, something you and I have talked a lot about with this case as you've given us analysis, this underage girl. Talk to me, Manuel. What do you think about this streamer potentially being a valuable witness?
Well, Julie, I believe that he is a valuable witness. The problem here is, look at his picture. He's got a lotto smile. He's literally one cheek to the other smiling, like he's just going to a club or dancing. I'm sorry, look at that. I mean, that smile says you have it says you have nothing on me. That smile says, I'm okay. I'm not worried. He's wearing an orange jumpsuit. He should be sad and upset, but he's not. So what does that smile tell me in my professional experience? That he's not going to be a good witness, and that he's most likely not going to say anything. And this is why he's smiling, because he's saying, wow, they don't really have nothing on me. And that's the problem with this guy. And you can see it in his face. And I've seen this numerous times throughout my experience.
Yeah. So what do you do with a guy like that, Manuel? Do you try to lean on him, you know, before he lawyers up? What do you do with him?
Well, you know what? They have to keep the pressure on him. And the only way they're going to keep the pressure on him is try to deny him bail any way they can. And then once he starts feeling the pressure of being in jail, not having freedom, then he's going to think twice. That smile will go away, and I promise you, he's going to start talking. But like my colleague Melba said, you know, the evidence is overwhelming in this case when it comes to David being a child predator. He was online playing Fortnite with her when Celeste was between 12 and 13 years old. Parents, everyone out there, you have to take control of what our children are doing, because this is not the first time that a case like this has happened, and it sure as hell will not be the last, because these sexual predators out there are playing games with our children in the safety of their bedrooms, and 99% of the parents don't even realize it.
Yeah, great points. I want to share with you both the latest statement from the LAPD's chief medical examiner talking about Celeste Rivas Hernandez's death, saying, quote, the cause and manner of death remain pending. The statement goes on to say the law precludes us from doing so while the court order remains in this case. Okay, so they don't have answers, it seems. And Melba, going back to you, I'm wondering if this is because of the state of her body when she was found. What are your thoughts on why we haven't seen cause and manner of death firmly determined here?
Because, again, like you said, Julie, the decomposition is so severe that it makes it impossible for the medical examiner to figure out what happened to her. So a medical examiner would be trying to look, for instance, at surface injuries. So if it was, let's say, strangulation, they're looking for if there's a broken hyoid bone, if there's, like pressure, bruises, anything like that. They're looking for gunshot wounds. They're looking for knife wounds. But again, if the body is so severely decomposed, and I mean all respect to this poor child who should be with us, but the human body, when it decomposes, it takes a lot of its secrets with it. So in this instance, we may have a scenario where we may never know the cause of death, and it may be listed as undetermined, which makes it an uphill battle for prosecutors. Not impossible, but it makes it an uphill battle when it comes time for prosecution.
Melba, great points. Manuel, back to you in terms of trying to get information from these guys who might have been in David's circle. Is this a lost cause? It feels like it's been so long.
No, it's not a lost cause. I mean, the fact, like I said, that we have this guy under custody now, it has strengthened the cause of this case and actually moves it a little bit forward because now they have an opportunity to lean on somebody. But like Melba said, when it comes to the body, we're most likely never going to know the cause of death because of how much it decayed. But there is a fact here that is unequivocal. One, he reported that car stolen. That Tesla was found approximately 1.5 city blocks from his house. No car thief steals a $100,000 Tesla and then parks it 1.5 blocks away. I'm sorry. That is insane. And that circumstantial evidence, Julie, is overwhelming. That body was in the trunk. It was a murder. Will we know the cause of death? No. But do we know it was a murder? Yes, because she didn't crawl inside of a trunk and dismember herself. The fact is, Julie, that car being 1.5 blocks away suggests that he parked it there. Is it circumstantial? Yes. But I know a jury will most likely find him guilty.
Hot take, Manuel. I love the insight.
I may disagree on that one, unfortunately, because it could have been an overdose, right? They could have been partying. It could have been an overdose. So we could have abuse of a corpse, not necessarily homicide. So maybe.
Yeah, definitely something we've talked about. Yeah, we got to leave it there for time, guys. Melba, Manuel, thank you so much. Coming up next here on Opening Statements, here's what we've got.
An arrest has been made in the case. Kristen Brock's 17-year-old daughter, Sarah Grace Patrick, has been taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault in connection with the deaths of her mother and her stepfather.
Accused parent killer Sarah Grace Patrick making another attempt at getting bond. So just how dangerous is she? We'll talk about that next. Plus, defendant Brendan Banfield caught on body camera right after his wife Christine died. We got a body language expert joining us to break down his behavior. Welcome back. In our spotlight this morning, accused parent killer, 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick, is expected to appear in a Georgia courtroom today to make another plea to the judge to give her a bond. Patrick is accused of killing her mother, Kristen, and her stepfather, James Brock, back in February of last year. But she wasn't arrested until July after making several chilling social media posts, even giving the eulogy at their funeral. Now, she's charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault. And at her last bond hearing, relatives testified that they were afraid of her.
If the defendant can kill her own parents in such a violent manner, I fear for my own safety and the safety of my family and friends.
So is Sarah Grace Patrick a danger to society? Let's talk about that. So pleased to welcome in double board certified psychiatrist, Dr. Dominic Sportelli. Dr. Dom, good morning to you. Okay, if you could personally evaluate Sarah Grace Patrick, would you explain to us the kind of questions you would ask and really what you would try to get to answer that question of how dangerous this child is?
Good morning, Julie. Thank you for having me as usual. And absolutely, what an interesting case and what a tragic case. So the first thing that I would think of when it comes to forensic psychiatry, meaning trying to understand the mind of somebody who potentially did something so horrible, would be to look at the motives, right? That's the first thing that I would really assess. When we look at parricide, which is the murder of a parent, we look at very, very common motives. The most common one, Julie, is chronic abuse. So we would evaluate her circumstances at home. The other ones are psychosis, but that doesn't seem to fit because that would be a very disorganized murder. The other one is severe family dysfunction. Now, in this, we might have something because we know there was divorce, we know there was potential abuse. Another would be emotional crisis, poor impulse control. But with poor impulse control, Julie, there wouldn't be any long-term planning. It would almost be a crime of passion. The other thing in her case, I would look for antisocial traits, which, you know, what are her goals to do this? Was it freedom? Was it money? Was it escape? And the other one that might have a play in this too would be allegiance to another person that was influential, perhaps a boyfriend. So that's how I would really frame this. I would say, okay, let's look at motives. And then now that she's being held and we're looking about safety, what I would look at now is what we call the neuropsychological evaluation, which they are certainly doing. And I know that, I don't know that that's been released yet or if it even will be released, but in a neuropsychological evaluation, Julie, what they're really looking at is, does the person have competency? Meaning, you know, are they aware of what is even going on? What is their risk? And that's the big question here. What is their risk of flight? What is their risk to self or others if they're released? This neuropsych eval too, Julie, will look at their developmental maturity, right? So even though she's like 17 or so, how developmentally mature is she? And then finally, they're going to look at what's called her psychiatric or neurodiagnosis. Now, based on all of this, Julie, and I know this is a lot, her current mental state, any substance use involved, her insight, meaning, does she really even know what potentially happened here? What is her insight and explanation into this? What is her emotional regulation? What are potential antisocial traits? Is there the history of trauma or abuse? So these are all the things that they're going to look at before they actually decide, hey, is she safe to go back into the community until her trial?
Wow. Dr. Dom, I want to come to one of your lectures. This is so fascinating. We are hanging on to every word here. We have a clip we want you to take a look at, please. So this is one of many of Sarah Grace's TikToks. She liked TikToking, and apparently she was reaching out to some true crime influencers, telling them about the case. This is before she was arrested, when she perhaps wasn't even viewed as a suspect. Who knows? Police were pretty quiet. Let's take a look.
He doesn't know it, but a year from now, our family will be torn apart, and I will move far away and won't see or talk to him for 5 years. I'm feeling so
tired. Ooh, Dr. Dom, tell us what you're thinking as you're watching that, please.
Yeah, so of course, just like anybody, you don't have to be a board-certified psychiatrist to find that challenging to watch. Now, there are a few things to think about here. There is the reality that that generation, her generation, use social media as an outlet, okay? So let's put that on the table. However, there's a very significant concern here with her ability to cope with challenges. If her parents were murdered, if her parents are deceased and she's grieving, was it, quote unquote, appropriate? Was it normal to go online and present that way? And that's the big question. And when they do a neuropsychological evaluation, again, developmental maturity, where does she stand? Is that congruent with what she did, because if she's not very emotionally developed, then maybe she would do something like that, go online and let the world know what's happening and be dramatic and crying. But if she's coming across as somebody that has an intellectual anything, if her IQ is significant, if her emotional maturity is within normal limits, then now that's almost a behavior that shows that there's a dramatic flair, there's something else, there's another motive for doing that. And that's where it becomes questionable and really challenging. So I think the neuropsychological evaluation is really going to clue us in.
Oh, definitely. Wow. Dr. Dum, one last quick question for you, please. There's another child in the family, as you know. Sarah Grace Patrick has a younger sister who found her mom and dad on that dreadful day, shot to death in the home. The sister's considerably younger, and the concern I keep thinking about, and I'm wondering if this is valid from a psychiatry standpoint, is if she's given a bond and allowed back in whatever home that child is perhaps being taken care of in, is she going to be problematic for that younger sister's development?
Yeah, the answer there, Julie, is what was the relationship like prior? Were they close? Were they supportive? Did they get along well? And what is their relationship like now? And how does that little girl view her bigger sister? So a lot of questions there. But on the other point, it could be a very traumatic experience having her sister come home if that young child views her sister as somebody potentially dangerous or just not well.
Wow. Dr. Dom Sportelli, always excellent insight from you. Thank you for making time to see us this morning. We know you have a very busy schedule. And friends at home, do yourself a favor. If you're not already following him, follow Dr. Sportelli on Instagram. Loving all the videos you've been doing. They're really, really insightful and helpful, certainly with so many of the cases we come across. We'll see you soon, Doc. Friends at home, go get some more coffee and then come right back. You won't want to miss what's coming up next.
Can you have someone check with him again?
No. What is the nature of the incident?
Check what?
The status of his wife, ma'am.
Hi, sir. My name is Juliana. I'm one of the doctors here. Your wife has died.
We got the moment Brendan Banfield was told that his wife had died. All caught on body camera footage. We got a body language expert live next. A husband is shot to death, but was his killing a family affair? We're breaking down the twisted alleged conspiracy that's playing out in a Utah courtroom.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Did an affair with the family's au pair lead to double murder?
He was saying, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The Au Pair Affair murder trial continues Wednesday morning on Court TV.
All eyes are on defendant Brendan Banfield as he's expected to testify in his own defense once court resumes in Virginia. But could his actions seen by the jury in body camera footage tip the scales of justice? So let's talk about it. So this guy's accused of murdering his wife, Christine, and another man named Joseph Ryan during a plot that he allegedly orchestrated in order to run off with his au pair. Some new body camera footage of Banfield in the moments after the homicides occurred could become key to the case. So let's review it all with body language expert Rodney Smith. Rodney, good morning to you. First clip for you, please. This is Brendan Banfield. This is where he's in the hospital the moment he gets news of Christine's death.
Hi, sir. My name is Juliana. I'm one of the doctors here. Your wife has died. You were there at the time. So is there any part that I can help? I can explain what happened when she arrived here, but you were there and it sounds like there was a lot of blood loss.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that she died of blood loss. Her airway was actually okay. I'll call the medical examiner, of course, and we'll do an autopsy and make sure we know for certain. But
I was trying to apply pressure.
yeah. I mean, those were enormous wounds, and it's not.
There were so many.
Yes, and the neck is not compressible, so it's not possible really to stop all the blood loss. And her airway, it seems like, was in the midline okay. She was able to be intubated. Everything that was possible to be done was done for her right away. You did a wonderful, you did everything that was possible. It's not a survivable injury.
Oh, Rodney, tell us what you see going on here, please.
So, well, first of all, good morning, Julie. And I would say I was very fortunate to take a look at this entire clip. And there's a lot going on here. Initially, once she tells him that his wife has died, if you look very, very closely, every time he has his head up, he has a significant amount of wrinkles in his forehead. However, every time he goes downward, you no longer continue to see any type of furrowing in his brow. They seem to vanish or decrease. And one of the reasons why I believe that is because the micro as well as macro expression of sadness is one of the most difficult to complete, because we're talking about an inward and an upward pull of the eyebrow muscles, as well as congruency with the mouth corners going down. However, what we see is quite the opposite. We see more of a relaxed brow, but we see an over-exaggeration and almost a contrived effort, which is drawing more attention as he is trying to do this panting type breathing, and he does this whimpering, this almost like a pouting like you would expect to see from a child. And then occasionally he'll give these little these upward glances to see if they're looking at him, because I think what he's looking for is affirmation or confirmation as to whether or not they're believing what he's actually saying. But another thing that I found very interesting in this was for him to have done the amount of crying, if you will, and for that duration, we don't see any redness in his face, and crying can deplete you. Anyone that has ever cried for an extended amount of time will see there's also a need for hydration, because we may have tears falling, we may have nasal drip, as well as that constant that dries the mouth out. And he didn't even ask for water at any point. I just see so many avenues that point to this being more staged acting than actual, true, genuine sadness.
Such great analysis, Rodney. We want you to do more for us, kindly, please. Here's another clip of Brendan Banfield. This is body camera footage in where he's washing his hands after the news of his wife's death. He's got blood on his hands. Here we go.
Yeah, sure. You have tissues here. You want to wash your hands? Probably feel better after that.
Rodney, tell us what stands out to you in this clip.
So as he stands up, and even as a furtherance of this, as he goes to the sink, he's washing his hands, and there comes a point where he looks down at the blood on his finger. He looks as though he's trying to clean off a certain part, and he actually throws his hands down on the sink. He does that twice. I think he does that in an effort to draw and gain attention to himself. He gives this look as though I'm giving up. I've been defeated here. I've just been at a loss. I've suffered. I've lost everything. It's not until the other nurse walks in and actually starts speaking to him, and then he goes back into this mannerism, this over-exaggeration where he says, "My wife is a nurse." And then he starts to go back into this panting again. And then she mentions about the request if they wanted to bring in a chaplain. And so, as I said, another thing that I also noticed was anytime that he's interacting with the females in this is when he starts to do this crying and this pouting. At the end of the video where he's actually talking to the detective, or when the officer's giving him information about what's going to happen next, yes, I understand. He's very short, brief, and succinct with them as far as his answers. But I'll also say this, when he does speak, his recovery time, as far as going from this sulking mode to going back and having a full-fledged conversation, his recovery time is great. We don't hear tonality shifts. Anytime that we are highly stressed, whether it's from anxiety, stress, anger, fear, surprise, to include sadness, there's a lot of times the vocal cords can have a level of stress so that when someone asks you a question, are you okay? I'll be okay. You hear the tightening or the tonality change. We don't hear that in him in not one clip where he's talking to anyone.
Right. Rodney Smith, you're so good at what you do. We've got one more clip for you to look at, please, and so, or I should say listen to, because this is Brennan Banfield on the 911 call. Rodney, you do voice analysis in addition to the body language analysis. So here, we're going to hear him calling for help.
My name is Brennan Banfield. I'm a federal agent. This is my house. There's somebody here. I shot him. But he stabbed her. She's bleeding. She's got several marks on her neck. What do I do?
Okay, Rodney, and here we get the benefit of video too, getting to watch that moment when it was played in court, so you can see him reacting in real time to the playing of it for the jury. Let's start with what you hear from him, and then we'll go with what you see from him. What'd you hear in that clip?
So once again, we hear clarity in his voice. We hear him give his introduction, and he also throws in there that he's a federal agent. Why I think that that's important is, hey, I'm a good guy. I'm a law enforcement officer. Let me throw some credibility with my title in here. He also references there's somebody here, and he says, I shot him, but then he gives this caveat, but he stabbed her. And so we hear this distancing language where he didn't say he stabbed my wife. This distancing is where he refers to his wife as a her, and this intruder as somebody. He never said someone broke into my house or there's an intruder in my house and I shot him. Once again, we don't hear a lot of panic. We hear a lot of control in his voice. He does speak rather quickly, but you don't hear a lot of panic in his voice. One of the other things that I also noticed in a furtherance of this clip, during the breakdown where the 911 dispatcher is talking to him, you never once hear any background consoling. Hang in there, baby. You're going to fight. You know, just I'm here for you. You hear no type of consoling. You don't hear any type of movement or rescuing efforts. And then there's even a time where there's a moment of silence, and there's a possibility that the phone may have been on mute where they're trying to get their stories together as to what to say or what to do next. I think many things might have been planned very well up until this point right here. And so it was go for what you know and do the best you can.
A great insight, Rodney. And we have about 10 seconds left. If you'll just take a look at the video of him, what's he showing you with his body language as he hears the call?
With that head down, we're either looking at guilt or shame. And shame comes where we look at things that we should not be proud of, or we feel that societal means have ruled us out. But guilt shows I can't lift my head up because I'm actually guilty of committing a crime or doing something that I should not have done.
Rodney Smith, always such great analysis from you. Thank you very much for coming on the show today and looking at all these clips. We'll see you soon. And friends at home, thank you for being with us for this episode of Opening Statements. If you liked it, watch it again. Go to courttv.com to do that. Tell your friends about it. Share it. We're here every weekday morning for you. We'll be